The NSWMA, the National Solid Waste Management Association's members, people, the small haulers that are in the community that are not members that were represented at the hearing the other night. In fact, one of those small haulers told me he found out about this study being done from one of his customers who happened to know somebody who knew somebody that had heard about it. Industry was not brought in. We weren't notified that there was any problem. You know, universally and in great numbers, the customers say they're all happy and they don't see a problem. They want to continue to have the right and the freedom to choose. There isn't a problem. What is the problem? We certainly were never made aware of it and or brought into the study at any time.
Right, exactly. And you know, one of the things that I found interesting is that at the Maplewoods special council meeting that was held, that there were these poster boards that had, you know, the pros and the cons of it. But it wasn't until the end of the meeting that it became evident that these were actually pros and cons from this study done in 2009 by
MPCA.
the MPCA. And that they weren't actually even the pros and cons that Maplewood's own Environmental and Natural Resource Commission developed in the course of all of their studying of this. Well, they had the whole list of pros and cons from their perspective, from the citizen community perspective as volunteers on the commission. So why didn't they use their pros and cons, which is for our community, rather than some pros and cons and some study done by a governmental agency for government?
Very good point. I mean,
it's absolutely a good point. And I would say, and I said it the other night at the hearing, there again, the members of the NSWMA were not brought into any discussions. This study was months and months and months long. It's 306 pages. And during the study,
this is the MPCA study.
The MPCA study.
Not the study done
That's
recently.
correct. The MPCA study that is being used in exactly this situation. We were notified about 10 days before the study was due. Within 4 days, I put together a meeting, got the members, some on a conference call, some actually present, in order to meet a deadline that they had, because by the time we met, we had 6 days. He had 6 days to produce this report for the PCA. The report was done. 306 pages were done. There was some small input from the hauling community, and you know, once the study was put forth and there was a presentation on that study, it was apparent that there were significant issues with the numbers within the study. And I know that the study was categorized as interesting information. It was categorized as not being scientific, and I guess that allows for the fact that it doesn't have to be accurate, because in dozens of cases, and the reason I know this is that Doug Carnival, myself, and 2 other hauling companies actually went to the PCA, took boxes of information, went through each item, each line item, and found a significant amount of errors that contributed in actually balancing the study one way or another, and not always accurately.
Wow, interesting. And one of the things that I've noticed from even just my own experience, although I've never seen this study or had a chance to look at it, but just in my experience and working with various different kinds of bureaucracies and studies and whatever, is that once something has gone that far down the road and there's only 6 days left to the end and they've asked somebody for input, it's sort of like that token input where they've actually left spaces for your answers but not actually really incorporating your answers into the analysis. It's just sort of like, well, this is what their response was to all of this, and they just left a spot and plugged it in. Now, did it look like that to
Diane,
you?
You're sure you didn't read that study? Because that's exactly what happened.
It goes beyond
That's
that.
exactly what happened.
But you see, but that's so predictable, because that is truly the way it generally works
Yes,
out.
that is exactly right.
The firm that was hired to do the report, the sample survey responses were from employees of the company that was hired to do the report for the PCA. There were some sample, there were some surveys that were sent to the communities, and some of the people that lived in the communities, employees of the city, also got a chance to respond. But in many, many cases, there were 2 communities, one being Maplewood within the study, that the entire city of Maplewood was represented by 1 response.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
And we have a population of close to 37,000 people, all represented by one.
One city
one
employee.
response. One city employee dictated the response within the study. There was the other city that had one.
Oh, it's
happened to
probably
be-
the liaison to the Environmental and Natural Resource Commission is my guess. I
know-
won't say names, but I would be willing that I could even guess without even having ESP.
I don't know. You know, I don't
don't
know.
know.
I just don't know. All I do know is that when you look at an invoice or a statement,
Yes.
and you try and let's assume you got a survey sample and it said, you know, I want to know what the rate for your municipal solid waste is, your trash only. You would go through the invoice, the statement, and you would try and dissect the county and city taxes, the surcharges, the fees, the fact that you may or may not have yard waste built into that cost, you may or may not have recycling fees built into that cost, there's taxes associated or in recycling backup taxes. And then we ask you to give a number. And you do your best, but the trouble is when you give it to people and you ask them to take those things apart, even if they try hard, there's a significant amount of error that goes into
That's right.
The responses. In a particular case that I know of, there was another community. One response dictated the rates and the numbers for that community. And you know, when it looks like a line item of cities and it says the city of X, here's the rates, you'd think that there's a huge sample and they went through it and maybe threw out the highs and lows and gave you a pretty good average of what was in there. One, I looked at it, I called our offices from the area we were taking these reports apart at. I asked for the information and found that the rate that was reported included fees for yard waste, and that skewed the report by several dollars a month.
Right.
And in a report like this, several dollars a month is what we're talking about.
Right.
Sometimes less.
Exactly,
So.
exactly. Well, in talking about, you know, when we're looking back at the survey that was done in Maplewood in 2009, the only other issue besides being able to make your own choice in who your trash hauler was, the only other issue that actually had a stronger response of, you know, a higher, where there was like a really marked response from citizens, was the fact that citizens wanted to preserve permanently their neighborhood preserves that were purchased with referendum money, and because that they didn't want them sold. And that was besides being able to pick your own single trash your own hauler and not have single hauler trash hauling in Maplewood, that, you know, those are the two big hot button item in that survey. I mean, those are the two things that people really cared about.
Exactly. And those are the two things that the government should stay away from, seems to me.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, something I think that's really important, and if I can get back to
Yes.
the two principal issues that are of concern. One is that citizens truly want to make their own decision and don't want the government to do it. And I think the other thing that many witnesses testified to and are very serious about is they don't want to see the small haulers primarily who are in the Maplewood community, who've been serving them for years, lose the ability to do business in the city. And that's the one of the sinister parts of this, and I don't mean to impute any bad motives to anybody, but that's the unfortunate fallout of an action like this that may be an unintended consequence. So if the city were to pick one hauler or to divide the city up into brackets, there's going to be small haulers who've built business over 30, 40 years in some cases that will no longer be permitted to do what they do in the city of Maplewood. Not because they provided bad service, not because the citizens are unhappy with that service, but because the city said, we have a better way of doing things.
And not even because their trucks are too heavy.
Exactly.
That there's no real rational reason why they can't do business in the city.
Right.
And we haven't really even heard any real rational reason why, as I think you talked about earlier, well, what's the problem?
Right.
You hadn't heard what the problem is. What is the problem?
Exactly.
Why are we trying to solve something that there doesn't appear to be a real problem about?
Exactly. And talking about small haulers, you noticed I wasn't the only one who spoke at that meeting, and Mark wasn't the only one who spoke at that meeting. There were two independent family-owned businesses that are haulers that had worked that territory and had found customers and are pleasing their customers over the years. They're not even members of our association. They wanted to step forward and say, don't do this to the citizens and don't do it to us. This is something that we've built up over the years. why are you saying that we may not be able to do business here? That's like saying someone can't sell a product in your community for no good reason.
Right.
They haven't violated the law, they haven't been unethical, they haven't provided bad service, and yet the city, maybe unwittingly, is telling good, solid business people in the community they can't work here.
Right.
It just doesn't seem appropriate, and the citizens have certainly echoed that in spades.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I understand we have another caller on the line. Caller, thank you for calling in this evening. Questions or comments?
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
The point is that, you know, they've got a 5% increase they're trying to push on everybody, and I'm sure with this trash hauling, that's another way for them to get their hands in your pockets more. So they're going to end up making some more money off of the citizens that live in this community. The other thing is you got a dictator that basically wants to push his will on everybody, and he doesn't listen to people at all. They're all a bunch of arrogant people, and they're going to do what they want to do unless you get enough people out there to let them know that you're about fed up with their behavior and you better change.
Well, thank you for those comments, and you know, it kind of triggered a thought in my mind, something that another caller said too about, you know, really what's kind of behind this. And you know, I think some people feel that part of it is because then the city can charge an administrative fee. And I think there was actually some discussion about that actually at the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission meeting about charging an administrative fee. And you know, I'm not so certain that I believe that this is actually being pushed by the Met Council or maybe even by Ramsey County. I think it's more of something that is a public policy driven issue coming from the League of Minnesota Cities, because they're the ones who actually many times set those public policy ideas that they send out to municipalities, whether or not if it's eminent domain or public services or what it might be. They're the ones that sort of many times set that discussion up.
That could be. We have no opinion on that.
And I don't know either. It's something to look, I should look into.
But on the administrative fee issue, I mean, if the city takes over this business, basically, hires a hauler to haul the city's waste on behalf of the customers, the city can set the rates that are going to be charged to the citizens.
And I would say that in the study the PCA had done, that was discussed. There is sections in that 300-page report that do discuss which cities pay or charge an additional fee and what the uses are for it. So it certainly has been looked at.
Oh, that's good. Now, I understand we have another caller on the line. This is a hot topic, so we got lots of callers. Thank you for calling in. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Ralph calling. Not the question, but the statement I want to put out there is Maplewood, they don't want to maintain streets anymore. They just want to replace them. Now, if engineering has been doing their job, engineering the streets to the load limits that they can carry, then if they're not standing up to that load limit, they should have load limit signs posted at the streets. I don't see those signs posted around, so apparently they're depending on engineering to take care of the weights that they built into the streets. The other thing is like you said, anytime the city gets their fingers into something, you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to pay dearly for it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for calling. Go ahead. Looks like you have a...
Well, you know, I as far as the roadway, I did look at the city's website today, and I do see they identified 2 streets that I saw that were less than 9-ton axle weight streets. If the streets are designed for the 9-ton axle weight, they're designed to take not only our equipment, but if you think about this for a minute, what the city is attempting to do here, not just to the hauling community, but to every small business owner. If you've got a roofing company, or you've got a bar, or you've got a convenience store, and the city said to any one of you out there, you know what, we're just going to go with one bar in town, or we're just going to go with one convenience store, or you know, I see here we've got about 12 roofing companies that are housed within this community. We really only need one, and we're a little concerned about some of the issues. it can affect anybody. Any of you out there can be subject to a government-managed business taking. And when I sat back and I listened to one of the small haulers that talked, it struck home with me because I work with a family-owned business. In this particular case, the hauler that was speaking to the group at the hearing said that he had bought the business from his mother.